Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Bob's Live, our weekly show right here on the internet. And well, this week I have a little bit of a shorter show, especially compared to last week. It ran pretty long. Um, but this week I want to head out to the greenhouse and do a quick update of what's happening out in the greenhouse, and then the other thing that I want to talk about is springing forward and some of the debates around it, and how, interestingly enough, it's kind of appropriate for current events. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's happening out in the greenhouse. Today I'm here at our newest greenhouse, where when we were up here before, we were just starting to move some plants in it for this spring. But today we have it completely packed full of plugs and also some finished product. And we're also starting to bring more of the systems online. So let's take a look at some of what we have growing up here. Right behind me here we have some hanging baskets that are coming in, and these are really decorative, beautiful mixed containers. So let's take a look at some of the different varieties. So these are grown from cuttings like the ones that we've looked at before, and this particular variety is Mixed Masters, and it's called Gimme Some Sugar. So yeah, it has kind of a yellow, pink, and blue mix to it. Here's another variety called Paradise Sunrise. And one of my favorites when it comes to creative names, a Grape Fit. So in our older greenhouses here at Bob's, we've relied on cement blocks and 2x4s to make up our benches. Something new that we're trying in this greenhouse are benches that are made out of galvanized supports. And here you can see how they'll work with our existing rail system that we use. And each one of these rails holds 10 trays, and each bench is 50 trays. So each square block out through the greenhouse represents 50 trays. So that's a quick update of what we have happening up here at our newest greenhouse. And well, in an attempt to get a cool panning shot, I managed to drop my phone off of a scissor lift. And yeah, the screen that I'm looking at right now is not pretty, but I did manage to capture it on camera. So yeah, my phone, it took a little bit of a tumble, and I don't know if you can see it, but right now I have some tape holding it together. Which, that's kind of weird because I'm looking at myself right now. This is how I watch the comments on Facebook. But it's kind of a delay, which is kind of weird sometimes. Uh, Anyhow, speaking of Facebook, of course, you can always follow Bob's Market through our website at bobsmarket.com, or you can find us on social media at Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and we're also over on TikTok. So I've uploaded a few TikTok videos this week. You can find us there at Bob's Market. And I'm trying to get us up to 1,000 followers on TikTok, because once we do that, we can start going live there, just like we started doing over on Instagram. So if you follow us on Instagram at Bob's Market, periodically I'm going to go live from out in the greenhouse and just different things that are going on. We did the first one this week, and it was pretty cool.
So it's a little bit more informal than our weekly show here. And Gloria Great says, "Oh my, but you grow cute tomatoes." uh, she follows me on Facebook and on my own personal Instagram, and I posted a picture of my hydroponic tomatoes, which they're a little cherry tomato variety, but they're about the size of my pinky finger. So it was like the world's smallest bumper crop of tomatoes. um, so this week, I want to talk about daylight savings time. Of course, this weekend on Saturday night, you need to remember to set your clocks forward an hour. And we're going to be jumping forward into daylight saving time. And there's always a debate that comes up this time of year whether to have it or not. And on the show notes page for this week's episode of Bob's Live, I linked to an older blog post, and I'm actually going to go in and kind of refresh it and use it as this week's blog post, because right now we're in like the super busy season here at Bob's, and I've actually got a couple other projects that I'm working on right now. But a little bit of the history of daylight savings time. Of course, famously, Benjamin Franklin was kind of the first person to kind of put forward the idea. But it really became popularized and took off in the late 1800s. And there was a guy named George Vernon Hudson, um, who was the first person to kind of propose the modern concept of daylight saving time. And it was first implemented in Germany and Austria in 1916. And many countries kind of adopted it during World War II. Because the theory of daylight saving time, and this is where it kind of applies to our current situation, the theory is that it saves on energy. Now, today it might be a little bit more convoluted because we don't really light our houses the same way. We're using a lot more energy efficient lighting. At least most of us are. You can't go out and buy incandescent bulbs pretty much anymore. You're going to buy LEDs that are, you know, hundreds of times, tens of times more energy efficient. So instead of a 60-watt bulb, you have a 60-watt equivalent bulb, but it's only using 5 or 6 watts of electricity. But the idea is that by bumping forward an hour and putting sunset later into the evening, people would be outside, and then they wouldn't be relying on artificial lighting inside. So during World War II, that was mostly, you know, electric lighting, but also back then, still, a lot of rural areas still used oil lamps. And especially the further you go back. So some of these early adopting countries in the early 1900s, you still had a lot of oil lamp usage. So daylight savings time really helped save on energy. Also, back then, in like, well, I say back then, a few years before I was born, the 1970s, when we also had an energy crisis, daylight saving time again was kind of brought to the forefront as a way to save on energy cost. And the idea is during the summertime, you could be outside later in the evening, and you could save on needing to air condition your house. So you could bump the temperature up higher and save on those energy costs. So that's where a lot of the idea for daylight saving time comes from. And then also it has a lot to do with farming. Being able to be out later in your barn, working on the farm, needing to put in crops, heading into fall. That all plays into it also. But there's also, the negative side effects of it. I know I suffer from a little bit of seasonal affective disorder. So in the wintertime, I can really get kind of bummed out when the days are extremely short. One of the things that I do is I use a sunlight lamp. It's from a company called Circadian Optics, which circadian is like circadian rhythm, your daily rhythm. Uh, but it produces light that's the same wavelengths as daylight. And I use it in the morning when I first get up, while I'm doing some early work on the computer in the morning before I head in to the office. I'll have the light on there at my desk, and it kind of helps wake me up while I'm, of course, drinking my morning coffee. But that just kind of helps out. But there is some evidence linked to daylight saving time, and that is that one of the negative effects is some researchers have noticed a spike in heart attacks right after the time change. And that's because our bodies have to adjust to now going to bed an hour different than what we're accustomed to and waking up an hour off. So that kind of messes with your brain chemistry for a while. Something that I try to do is kind of ease into it. So I'll start kind of adjusting when I'm waking up and going to sleep, a week or so before and a week or so after, to try to help out with that. And, well, I am starting to ramble. This week on our website, we'll be talking about daylight saving time. Is it saving or savings? That could be a whole other debate. But anyhow, until next time, keep growing.